Black cisgender heterosexual identified men are killing Black trans women. Black ones.
We are not talking about it in the church.
Those street guys are already engineers. If they're mixing drugs and stuff together, they're chemical engineers.
If you're just like, yeah, let's kill 50 cops just because, that's only a fraction of the Black people that they killed. Wait, now you're talking about my wife.
For those of you who are joining in, we are talking about just the housing in the Black community and owning property, why it's important, and how to get yourself in there.
When I think of financial literacy, I just don't think of the classroom work. I think some of it is practical application.
I'm scared, especially, calling them to arms, talking about poll workers or poll watchers. That is rooted in history of voter suppression and intimidation.
Joe Biden needs to make that a part of his educational platform.
Call that shit out.
I don't see much value in you speaking in tongues, and yet when you speak in English, you don't say nothing for my people.
Many of the reasons why we're dying is because of the conditions we live under that cause our health to be so bad, and that cause it's the food, it's the water, it's clean that shit up first.
When their fathers had prostate cancer, I had like a 150% chance of getting cancer, being diagnosed with cancer. I had a friend that did a raw vegan diet, 20 years remission, had thyroid cancer, never had surgery. I'm like, that's what I'm doing.
This week in Black People Shit, the conscience of America. Who will pick up the mantle now? I'm your host, Chrystee Pharris. Last week marked the passing of two of the greatest American heroes of all time, Reverend C.T. Vivian and Congressman John Lewis. Many might know Reverend C.T. Vivian and John Lewis as civil rights activists who fought tirelessly alongside Dr. Martin Luther King as freedom riders in an effort to help make social and political change. But they were more than just that. They were the backbone to many of the freedoms and civil liberties we hold sacred, and a shining example that there is no obstacle too insurmountable or too difficult to overcome with persistence and the courage of your conviction. I am here today to discuss their legacy and impact with educator and activist Theon Jones, actress Janora McDuffie, and writer Abdul Majid. Let me bring everybody in. Hi, everybody. And we have Theon Jones that came in.
Hey, Theon.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Theon.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Doing? Excellent.
Excellent.
Good to be alive. 80 years old.
Amen. 80 years old.
Yes.
So, just so everybody knows, thank you, Chris, for joining. We're going to probably get a little bit of a feedback because he is on his cell phone. But we're going to make it work.
Okay.
Everybody mute themselves separately on. And let's see if that makes a difference. All right. So let's see. Nope. Still have a little bit of an echo. That's okay. So welcome everybody. We do have a special guest that is here. Theon Jones is here to give us a little context of the life and legacy of two great men that we lost this past week. He was born in 1939 in Mississippi. Theon Jones is a retired educator of 36 years and a graduate of Alcorn State University. Having lived during the time of Jim Crow and the civil uprising, and of course the historic Civil Rights Act, Theon Jones is here to give us a little insight on our not too distant history and to shed some light on our current state of affairs. So we will. I guess everybody can just come back in. Because it looks like we're a little bit of a.
Okay. I was born in 1939 also. And I was born in Mississippi, McComb, Mississippi. And John Lewis was born in Alabama. These states are neighboring states. And both of us shared the same type of harsh treatment during that time. In Mississippi, it was just as rough, I would say, as bad as Alabama. In Mississippi, we had a governor named Ross Barnett. And in Alabama, they had George Wallace. And by the way, Donald Trump's playbook is straight from these guys' playbook. it's the same messaging that was used back in the 60s. And I just think that I need to throw that out there so people can understand exactly what's going on and the connections to that. Also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What was it like growing up during the Jim Crow?
Okay, growing up, blacks in Macomb, my hometown, blacks live on the south side of the railroad track. The whites live on the north side of the railroad tracks. At sundown, blacks were told to go home, and then the whites would. This is how the police come into effect. Also, they were sending police out to patrol to make sure that the blacks were on their side of the track. Now, also, blacks had their own businesses. That we had some hotels and restaurants and that type of thing. But all of the restaurants were segregated. The blacks had to go to the back of the restaurant if they wanted to eat, and in the movie theaters, the whites sat down and the blacks sat in the balcony. And this is going on in Alabama and Mississippi. In fact, all throughout the South, North Carolina, South Carolina, Louisiana, all the way through. So that was the basic things of growing up in Mississippi. The textbooks were passed down from the white schools. My math textbook was a textbook that the cover was off, and this type of thing. These are things that we had to use. Everything in the school system were passed down after the whites got through using these basic materials, and this is true in Alabama and Mississippi. Any questions or discussion among any of that?
Go ahead, Janora. I think I might have.
I can continue on some other issues if you want me to.
One second, Janora is on.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at the phone. Go ahead, Janora.
I guess that would help if I unmuted myself. Mr. Jones, thank you so much for being here. And I apologize for the technical whatever we have going on. But we're gonna push through. And I appreciate you being here. I think one thing that is always important to understand with my generation is that this was not so long ago. And you are still here on this planet and being able to speak of those experiences and to still be here. To hear again from a perspective that I think is very needed in this conversation. Let's talk about the change within the civil rights movement itself. So we talked about, or you shared some of your Jim Crow experiences. Talk about when things started to change and the fight that you were a part of back in the 60s.
Things began to change. There was a young man came to Macomb, Mississippi named Bob Moses. Bob was responsible to increase the ability for blacks to vote. I was part of that campaign, and we studied for the test. During that time, for African Americans to vote during that time, they would give you this long test on the state constitution. And probably during that time, less than 1% of blacks were voting during that time. I didn't know anyone in my life living there that was voting that was black, to be honest with you. Even my parents were not voting during that time because they were afraid. There was so much intimidation, if they thought you could vote. But I was a junior in college, and I got involved in this deal, and I went down and voted and passed the test and everything. And the whites called us nigger agitators, and then they burned crosses, and all these type of things. And so now Bob Moses, if you do research on him later, just for the audience, Bob Moses is a great man also. He did a lot of work in Mississippi to help to start blacks to vote in Mississippi. Now, we're speaking of the late 50s and the early 60s. This is long before many of you even thought of, and some of your parents, you know. I feel blessed just to be on the planet, you know, after enduring all of this growing up.
So, Mr. Jones, let me just ask you, and I put you on mute. I'll take you off mute when I've finished my question. So I was just watching last night a documentary on John Lewis and what they were talking about, and I think it's important for everybody to hear and why it's so important to vote. They were saying that you had to pass a literacy test in order to be able to vote, and one of them that John talked about was that you had to count the bubbles and give them amount of bubbles that were on an actual soap, or count all of the beans that might have been in a jar. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yes. This is there were many blacks that could not vote, and they were shut out of the voting situation because of this. You know, it was really crazy. But later, around 61, 62, that they started this test that you spoke of. But prior to that time, exactly right, that there were soap bubbles that you had to count in a bar and everything, you know, whichever is possible to guess on that. So many things were done during that time to keep blacks from voting. And also you can research that the whites knew the history of all this in terms of it was discussed among them that if too many of those darkists vote, they would take over. And Macomb was a place where the blacks actually outnumbered the whites. Many of the towns in Mississippi, whether you know it or not, the blacks outnumbered the white, and many in Alabama. So this is why they was cracking the whip, you know, trying to stop blacks from voting, you know, to gain the power that they deserve to gain. So you just most definitely, I lived through that. Bob Moses lived through that. Bob Moses went to jail on that type of thing. But the test that we took in the 60s, it was a difficult test that many people couldn't pass if they were not going to school or college or something of that nature. The test was about 25 questions on the state constitution of Mississippi and the local constitution, you know, laws and that type of thing. And so, as a college student, I spent probably a good month getting prepared for that test alone. But fortunate for us, the group of kids that went down, they all passed the test during that time. And then things expanded and improved as time went on. But yes, I lived through that. And my mother was afraid to get involved because of the clan through cocktails in the ditches and at the house, you know, to try to set it on fire. All that is a jar of kerosene, you know, that they would throw at your house to try to burn it if they found out that you were participating. So a lot of blacks during that time was intimidated because of the horror, because of the you know, toxic environment that they were creating and that type of thing. And many blacks was beaten, just like John Lewis. Many of them was beaten, they was threatened. A couple was murdered, that type of thing, you know, all because they was trying to gain the right to vote.
Yeah, I was watching I was watching John Lewis, and he was saying that once you get over the fear, there's nothing that can stop you, you know. And I thought that was I thought that was very powerful. Abdul, I know you have something.
I just got a simple question. How did you feel, or do you remember your experience of where you were when the Voting Rights Act in '65 was passed? Can you remember where you were or what you were doing?
Yes, in '65, I was in Vicksburg, Mississippi. I taught 3 years in Vicksburg, Mississippi when it was passed. And this opened the door for many blacks in the city of Vicksburg, Mississippi to vote. They didn't increase. And in that particular city, blacks gained a lot of power in terms of mayorships and things like that. Uh, but yes, and they were very happy, that this was passed, done it because during the back in the day, things were just totally different from that, and blacks didn't have any problem voting during that time in Vicksburg, Mississippi. But I understand in parts of Mississippi, some of the same tactics was used, to try to intimidate the voters, this type of thing. Same as they're trying to do, now.
What do you think? What do you think about the Black Lives Movement that's happening right now?
I think the Black Lives Movement is an excellent, same as John Lewis said, he had quoted also. I think it's just wonderful, that those young ladies are really out there doing the work that's needed because there's a lot of work that is needed, so I support it, I salute it, and I think it's excellent, excellent. I didn't think I would see something like this in my lifetime. This is very good.
All right. Sorry, I'm working on figuring out how to unmute myself there, Mr. Jones. So talk about, you started in Mississippi, and that I can't think of anything more than a deep South experience in Mississippi. And now I know that you are in Cleveland, Ohio. Can you talk about your migration from the South to the big city? And if you think now the big city life or the new place you are in the United States, is there a different struggle there? Whether it's regarding the Black Lives Movement or just life itself for the Black folk in the city versus the South?
Yes, well, during this day and age, I guess the passion that I have now is I'm very concerned about the achievement gap. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done uh, to close this achievement gap. It's the same thing that was discussed in the '60s, closing the achievement gap. And I think we really need to focus on that, because our kids deserve better than what they're getting from the school system across America. And the second thing, outside of the civil rights struggle, would be I'm very concerned of the violence in our communities across America, especially in our urban areas. I was speaking with my sister in Jackson, Mississippi. X number of people were shot and this type of thing. We just killing, and it doesn't have to be that way. Uh, I just feel that our kids need saviors to come in the community and uplift them to start loving one another. This type of thing. So those are two biggies that I'm still working in with now. To stop the violence and this type of thing. And all this can be done parallel with the Black Lives Movement also, because these are issues that are really affecting our communities. I was in Memphis, it's just the same thing. I was in Nashville, it's the same thing. Across America and Chicago, the same thing. And I feel excited. There's one person in education that's going to Congress for New York, Jamal Bowman. I know you guys have heard about him, along with all the other excellent people. But I'm really excited about Jamal Bowman because he was an educator. He was in the trenches. His kids achieved like my kids did. The kids could be competitive with kids in major work, and he was a principal. And that's awesome for him to be going to Congress to lay out his skill set to apply this to some of the things that I'm talking about in education.
Okay.
Okay.
One second. I just want to jump in real quick and just let everybody know who just joined in. If you're joining in late, we have a special guest, Theon Jones, Mr. Theon Jones, born in 1939 in Mississippi. He is talking about what happened with him during the Jim Crow time, voting, how they made them have to take a literacy test. They had to know the Constitution. And just all of the different struggles that they went through. I think Abdul has a question, but I wanted to make sure you guys knew what we were offering today. We wanted to get a little bit of insight from someone who was born during that time period, during the civil rights, because we can talk about it as much as we want, but we did not experience it. So it's great to have somebody on who went through that. So Abdul has something, Theon. So just give me 1 second. Go ahead, Abdul.
Having seen and gone through the Civil Rights Act and your participation with the voting, if you had any advice to give to this generation of what you think they need to do outside of the things that you just spoke of, what would your advice be to Black Lives Matter or to the younger generation and how to move forward and achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve with Black Lives Matter?
I think one of the main things is to stay the course. This isn't going to change things in 1 month or a year or two. That it has to be an ongoing struggle, to keep it going. And this is one of the things that I saw happen in my home state of Mississippi, that once certain things were achieved, then everyone got lackadaisical and it took the eye off of the many other social issues that need to be dealt with. So I think it's good to just be, just keep your eye on the prize, to stay focused on all the different issues that are out there that affect our kids' lives and our lives and this type of thing. That's basically how I would address that issue. Because the mistakes that some of us made in the past was that once certain things, that, as I said earlier, was achieved, then we got happy. This is just like a team winning, and then the next year, that you got to work harder to keep it going, because momentum. You're right. Everyone would be shooting at you, but it's the same thing in movements. Our society get lackadaisical on that. So I think that's one thing that our young group can really do that. And so far, I see them, they stand the course. It's awesome. I've never seen so many outstanding leaders that, that stand the course and doing exactly some of the things that I'm talking about.
Well, we just want to say thank you for coming on. Mr. Jones, we really appreciate your time and just teaching us, the younger generation, and teaching the younger generation below us, what it was like to go through what you went through and how we need to continue the struggle. Before I let you go, if there's anything else that Janora or Abdul wants to say real quick before we let him go, is there anything you guys wanted to bring up real quick?
In addition, just to thanking you again for your time, is I am leaving with you still seeing hope for something better. So I think out of our conversation, that's what I'm taking away. So thank you, Mr. Jones. I'm gonna keep hope alive too.
Okay. I also would like to add this too. Many of the young people doing that in the area that I'm living in, that they're getting involved and trying to make things different. And so that's great to see.
Abdul?
No, I just wanted to just say thank you for your continued effort, your inspiration, and all the information you've given us today and everything you've done prior to this with the Voting Rights Act. I know we stand on your shoulders, and we just appreciate you and everything that you and your generation have done for us.
And thank all of you so very much.
All right. Well, Enjoy the rest of your evening. I know you're on the East Coast, so thank you for joining, and we'll definitely keep you abreast of what's happening. So thanks again.
Katie, thanks again. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks. Wow. That was something special.
It was. And you know, another thing I got from the conversation with Mr. Jones, so many people we don't know. I didn't know Bob Moses, but apparently he was extremely instrumental. And I'll be the first to admit as well, I was not familiar with Reverend C.T. Vivian either. And so I think, to me, all of this is just a testament and a reminder that I need to learn as well. I know through this movement, we're telling white folks, learn our history. Shit. It's a reminder and a reflection that there's so much I don't know and I need to learn as well. So that's really a huge takeaway from me.
So I just want to let people know, if you guys would like to join the conversation, you can join the conversation here. I thought I sent it as a link, but I think I didn't. So I will share it in 2 seconds. So if you would like to come on and discuss anything that we are talking about, please join in on our little banter. So no, for me, I think I knew about these wonderful people, and I don't think in the beginning, when it came to Martin Luther King and all of that, I think I took it for granted until I actually hit the age and was like, wow, this man died. Like, he had kids and he died. He gave up his life, sacrificed his life in order for us to be able to have freedom. And I start to appreciate them even more and more and more, and try to do as much research as I possibly can.
I was reading one of the comments from a guy named Theon Sanders. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And one of the things that he said was that we have adopted too many cultural changes and white supremacy, racial ideology. But the cultural changes part I want to say is, it's like listening to Mr. Jones speak is like listening to a living history book. And I think we need to appreciate that a little bit more. And the cultural part is that in Africa, we have what everybody knows as a griot. People know the idea of a griot. They keep the stories of the community and things of that nature. Yep. And I think we need to embrace and shine light on gentlemen like Mr. Jones, who is a griot, who is a living testimony, who is speaking, telling the stories of our community and not just the famous ones. And I just really appreciate the fact, his point of view. So
right. No, I totally agree with you on that one. So let's jump into some current events. Man, I feel like we had some interesting things that happened over the weekend. Let's start with Kanye West and everything that's been going on with Kanye. What do you guys think about all of that? The Kanye West stuff. I look at it from a different perspective. I actually feel more sad about, if you guys don't know, I had a brother who passed away. It actually be 2 years in like 2 weeks. But my brother had a mental illness. He was bipolar, schizophrenic, and medicated himself with drugs and everything else. And so I have a lot more compassion for Kanye. I've watched people who have had breakdowns like that and how they go left. And so I was more saddened by the situation with him more than anything else. How about you?
I want to throw something out there. Just to throw it out there, because I think that there's mental illness is real. Yep. I also think that there is something about people who might not have it all, but are thinking in a way that's just like beyond our time, or just on just a whole nother level that we can't get because we are operating on in these social norms. Stick with me here. And I'm not excusing some of the crazy ass things that Kanye says, but I'm wondering if he's trying to speak to us on a level that we just aren't understanding what he's saying. For example, I know we talked about his support of Trump and him wearing the Make America Great Again hat that would just make my head melt or explode. That's not the point. But he was saying that he was doing it to prove not that he was supporting Trump, but that we don't all have to think the same as Black folks. So in the rally, he had said something about Harriet Tubman didn't free slaves. So you listen to that on the surface and you're like, dude, don't even come at Harriet like that, because she was an amazing superhero in our history.
Right.
But maybe he was saying that we're still not free. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I'm just throwing it out there for conversation's sake.
Right.
I mean, maybe where he's operating is just somewhere that is on a whole nother hemisphere.
Have you ever dealt with anybody who's bipolar or who's had some mental? Because I'm telling you right now, I mean, I've heard from the government is speaking through me, through the sound waves, through the radio, you know, the Republicans are speaking, Bush is talking to me. Like, so, and also too, yeah, you know, he said all they did was free them and then they went to work for white people. But at that time, Black people didn't have, you know, a lot of businesses. So yeah, they did go and work for white people. And on top of that, you know, at least they were working for white people and got and got paid and could make a living and could get an education. I just think I hear what you're saying, but from my experience and hearing some of the crazy stuff that I've heard, you know, I just don't see it that way. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, no. So when I think about Kanye, I split him into like two different factions, right? Mm-hmm. On the one side, on the mental health side, I'm concerned about not just his mental health, but the medications he's on. Because if you look at what people with depression and anxiety and stuff like that, they're put on, I believe it's called serotonin receptor antagonists. Those are drugs like risperidone, trazodone.
You always got to come up with some big words. Go ahead, I'm listening.
Clarapine. Anyway, those particular drugs. But if you look at the side effects of those drugs, a lot of it is anxiety, agitation, suicidal thoughts. Mm-hmm. So some of that I give him leeway, because that might be pushing him to behave the way he's behaving. It's not just him acting out. It might be some of these drugs that are pushing people, and then when you add that in combination with all the other stuff that they're putting in our foods and putting in the water and alcohol and whatever it is. So I give him leeway on the mental health side. On the other side, the personality trait side, it's not like Kanye West hasn't acted an ass since we've known him. The only difference is that he's done it on our behest, so we accepted it more. Now that he's doing it to oppose us, now is the issue. And my thing is, like, if you're going to take him, if we were going to take him as on your side, you got to take him on the other side as well, because this behavior wasn't any different than jumping on stage with the white girl while he's Taylor Swift, or Trump don't care about Black people, or calling himself a god, or like he has a history of behaving this way. The only difference is that we either were entertained by it, or he did it. It seemed like to benefit us, like the George Bush stuff. So now, you know,
I just think I guess I never looked at it. I don't even know if I knew back then that he was mentally ill when he was doing all those things. And I also I remember he checked himself into an institution at some point in time when he was having a breakdown a couple of years ago. And I wonder what type of drugs did they put him on? Did they do like the shock treatment and all that kind of stuff that changes the brain? I mean, there's so many things that we just don't know. I don't feel like he started acting like really super crazy until the last couple of years, but he might have back then. And I just wasn't paying attention to that extent. But I just think, you know,
So
the brother needs a little help.
My dad and my stepmother's a psychiatrist. My dad was a physical therapist. They worked at a facility. In one of the sections of this facility was a psychiatric ward. They had a drug treatment section, they had a psych ward, and then they had an elderly center or elderly old people's home. The psych ward section, they're like walking zombies.
Yeah.
And they act erratic because of all of the drugs that you're giving them. And people don't even, and it's like, it's not just the drugs. Like some of these pharmacists are using you as test dummies. Like they're saying, okay, give you a little bit of this, give you a little bit of that, maybe take a little bit off of this, give you a little bit more of that. Like there's constantly changing the dosage, changing the amount. And none of that stuff is good on the brain. None of it is good on the brain. And I not just about him. I know this is mental health. What is it? Mental health.
Mental health month.
Yeah, I care more. I'm concerned about the kids as well. Just for the fact that your brain doesn't develop until you're 25, and you're shoving all of these medications in an undeveloped brain. So I don't know. Was he prior to this taking medication when he was younger? Like there's a whole lot of this that has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, for men, for boys, it doesn't hit until your adolescence, the latter part of your life up until like 25. So usually hits between teenage years and 25. So he might not have experienced that until the latter part of his years. Were you going to say something, Janora?
Yeah. What I'm really concerned about, we're talking about Kanye West, we're talking about mental health, but we're also talking about the consequences of him even being in the race. Like, I know he didn't get all of his petitions signed, so he may or may not be on the ballot, but I'm thinking about people who might write him in. I'm thinking about maybe he'll get his act together and be on somebody's ballot.
Right.
The consequences of this action could really turn the tide for November and the election in a way that is detrimental, not just for the next 4 years, but whoever is in that next seat will have how many Supreme Court seats that they'd have to fill? Like that's the institution of the way of life as we know it. So it's so much bigger than he need to take his meds. Oh, he was crying. Oh, whatever. It's like, man, like whether or not I can be married to who I'm married to might hinge upon his decision to run or not.
Right. You're right.
Janora, do you think that that those people would have been a problem regardless if Kanye West decided to run or not run? Like the people who he is rallying base, aren't they problematic regardless?
They're not problematic. Well, I never want to tell anybody how to vote or who to vote for. I can, I can stand for what I stand for. I think the people that he appealed to or he appeals to are those people who might have been in the Bernie Sanders camp and aren't really getting on board with Biden. Think Biden maybe is too much in the middle, or we talked about old white men last time. Just don't want to check the old white man box and see that repeat itself. So I do think he just checks a box that I don't think would have voted for Trump or supported Trump. But might not fully be on board for Biden, but are looking for an alternative between the two. And I think he does speak for some folks. And I wouldn't call them shucks. If you got to vote, you ain't problematic.
Right.
And I don't understand let you vote for Trump because, again, I don't want to tell somebody who to vote for. But I can't even believe I said his name so much.
When I say problematic, I mean like people look at him as ciphering votes from the Biden section, but there's a Green Party that's already there. There's a woman. Forgot what her name is off the top of my head. Yeah, there's already a Green Party candidate who's going to enter the race. They just don't speak about it, but she's already there.
No, I didn't even know about her. Let me just bring this up. So Joseph, I wanted to respond to this. Kanye needs someone who he can trust around him to listen and tell him, don't do that, brother. And let me tell you something. There was something that she said because Kim wrote something today or yesterday, I think it was today, where she said, it's very hard to get help for somebody who's an adult because they don't have to take their meds. They don't have to. And let me tell you something. With my brother's situation, I mean, trying to get him to understand was the hardest thing to try to get accomplished sometimes when he was on that trip. So I know it seems like it's easier said than done, but it's hard. It takes a toll. It really does take a toll. So thank you, Angela Easterling, who is one of my best friends. We went to college together. Let's jump to, since we're talking about mental health, we're talking about meds. Let's talk about Tamar Braxton, who we don't know if she tried to commit suicide, but is in the hospital. They say that she's out of critical or whatever the case may be, that she's in stable condition right now. At the moment, they're saying that she might have taken some pills. We know that she was on some antidepressant type pills. But there's some extra little stuff going on with her boyfriend David, and you know, we're just trying to figure out what's the deal with all of that. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, from what I know in terms of the latest and the update is that she has been transferred to a mental health facility, and that it is confirmed that she took an unknown amount of pills and combined that with alcohol. And the other layer, in addition to whatever with the boyfriend, is the reality show with her family on WeTV. Apparently, through the show or one of the latest episodes, she revealed the sexual abuse.
Oh, that one, yes.
Yeah, but between like 6 and 16, and how that broke her, and how WeTV is, what did she say? Cruel white slave masters who are destroying a great Black family, and felt pretty exploited. So there are a lot of things that can break folks. And I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be a mental health crisis that you have been dealing with. It could just be just stuff in life that just blow up and you just snap. So I'm not familiar enough with Tamar Braxton's history, but I know she's hurting. And
I was just gonna say, and it sounds like too that her boyfriend, from the family's perspective, is that he's pretty controlling and that he was really upset at the trailer that just came out for the new season. So
why they gotta blame the Black man? Why they always gotta blame the brother? I saw I read the same thing that you read. And if you take the brother out the mix, it wasn't like they weren't having issues from season 1 of the reality show. And I think people aren't taking into consideration, like, one of the things that really bothered me within this last couple of months was the death of Jazz Fly, the writer for
This Is Us.
This Is Us.
She committed suicide, and they said she had depression as well. And they said the conditions of quarantine, they're breaking a lot of people, man. I think people aren't taking that into consideration. This sort of doomsday experiences, this reality that we live in is unnormal. It's no sunlight, no interaction, no affection, no, the things that people are used to, I think can break a lot of people.
Right.
And I think people aren't taking that into consideration. At the times we're living in now, there's a lot of, I was just watching I was just watching a video. And they talked about the rise of depression and suicide post 2011, which is the rise of social media. So the correlation between the rise of social media and the rise of depression and the rise of suicide in this country. So I mean, that's like a horrible cocktail just for a person to do now in quarantine as well. It's like, it's crazy, man.
Yeah. Joyce said, "Oh yes, that is huge. I hope this coronavirus also brings light to mental health awareness too." Yeah, and that's why we're talking about it now. Joseph said those meds are very dangerous, so I look for alternative methods. Wait, he said something before that. I understand because I have anxiety. I also realize everyone is different. Yeah,
that just means Joseph smokes weed because his last name is High.
I do not know if that's the correlation that he was trying to make. But one thing I do appreciate about your comment, Joseph, is that you are admitting that you have anxiety. And I think that that is part of the solution is folks just being real. Like, look, I'm hurting. Look, this is how I feel. Look, this is what I've been through, or this is what I go through every week. So I think the more that we can come clean about our emotions and who we are and drop the shame and the stigma, I think that's a step forward to just finding healing.
Right.
And that's a whole other conversation. Black people don't do talking to therapists well. Like a lot of us, we rather go to the church, go to your big mama, go to whoever, but we don't do therapy well. And I think, like you just said, Janora, we got to remove that stigma.
I mean, listen, if we knew back then, maybe my brother would still be alive right now. If we knew all of those things, if we were able to talk about it back then, if we had the resources, which is why we fight for reparations, and people don't realize, all of the things that white people can have, we don't get to have because we don't have the health insurance and all of those things. Like, we don't have the resources. But I do believe that if we knew and understood, and I'm not saying that every white person has those opportunities. What I'm saying is that if we had it and we understood it and we had the knowledge behind it, my brother could possibly be alive right now. Period.
We got liquor stores and cocaine. That's what we got. They gave us liquor stores and cocaine.
Yeah,
they gave all the resources to every other community.
Yeah. No, you're right. And then Joy, who's another great friend of mine, she said meditation, physical fitness helps too. And we definitely know that because we always challenge each other to make sure that we're getting out there working out.
That's great. And one other thing with that, I'm sorry, I know you want to read Tim's comment real quick, but if we introduce all of this conversation sooner than when we're adults, like now I feel like, okay, I'm a grown adult, I can find some people to talk about it, but let's start talking about this in the schools. Let's start talking about taking care of yourself and self-care and mental health when we're in elementary school, middle school, in some way, incorporating that into the curriculum.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that would stop some of these kids from committing suicide at 8 and 9. I'm thinking, what in the world how could you even get to that place? Tim said, unfortunately, Latino people don't do therapy either. A combination of culture and religious customs discourage. That's a good one. So true. And then Joseph said, I surround myself with people who are supportive. Mental health therapists are necessary. I totally agree. And since we're on the same subject here, let's talk about Andrew Gillum. Andrew Gillum, if you guys don't know who he is, he was running for governor in Florida in 2018. He lost by a small amount, a narrow amount, according to the research that I found. But at some point in time, after he went to a wedding, he was caught in a room with 2 other men, and they had to call the ambulance because one guy, you're over there smiling, you crack me up. One of the guys ended up having an overdose from crystal meth. They found crystal meth. Now, what they're saying is that he did not have crystal meth in his system, not really sure, but he was drunk. And so, so he came out with this video stating, he was going to therapy and he was getting help. So go ahead, Abdul, go on and start, because you look like you got something to say.
No, I listened to his video when he said a lot about the fact that the pressure got on him and he was depressed, and that he had a history of drinking and his father had a history of drinking, that all these things came was like just a cocktail of just of bad stuff that happened at one time. But I know Andrew Gillum's a student of political history, and I know that, especially when it comes to Black people, Marion Barry, there's a couple other Sharp James in New Jersey. You got to be aware of your surroundings, because you can always be compromised. And I think that I don't know if it was the alcohol or the other men that made him drop his guard. But I don't understand it. His answers didn't make any sense to me. He just blamed it on everything else.
You know what somebody said to me a long time ago when I first moved to LA, and this was so important. This was probably one of the best things that kept me from getting caught up. And I think it might have been Steve Harvey who told me this, but he told me that what's going to happen is you're going to go to these parties, you're going to go to these events, and you're going to see people doing things. You're going to see people doing drugs and doing orgies and doing all this stuff. And yeah, you're like, oh, well, I don't do that stuff. And you're just going to be chilling and like, well, I'm going to let y'all do you, but I'm going to still be in this atmosphere because I feel like I need to be here, you know, to network with all these people. But then after a while, this stuff becomes normal. And then you find yourself like, well, yeah, I'll participate a little bit, but I'm not going to do. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in this mess. So it's the same thing what you're saying, where you can't allow yourself to be in this particular situations because it's going to start to wear and tear on you.
Has anybody ever attempted, Janora or Chrystee, attempted to compromise you in this business?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Janora. Do you want me to start?
No, that was me looking in my brain and my memory bank about life in LA. I mean, there is a very gray area and of compromise, not compromise. Yes. And I'll start from like it happened the first week I got to town. I was driving down Vine in Hollywood, and somebody came up to my car and handed me a card to do porn, as in like, if you're looking for a job, new booty in town, I got you. And I think about what if I didn't come from a family that was supportive, or what if I was dead ass broke, or you know, what if I just was in that space? And I think that is key. The things that find you when you're in that very vulnerable space of not remembering who you are, not feeling supported. And I think that goes back to mental health as well. And I think when we speak of mental health, it's again more than just I'm over here on the extreme of schizophrenic, bipolar. It's I'm having a bad day, and now I find myself in a compromising kind of situation. What are the decisions that I make? And I just pray that I am in a strong mental and self-esteem place those times I find myself in those situations, because sharks are always out there. I mean, especially in a place like LA.
Yeah. So. Go ahead.
Yeah, what were you saying? You're about to tell your.
Well, yeah, no. Here's the thing for me. I'm not saying that those situations did not come up for me, but I did have, you know, Steve Harvey who would like check me when I would be at all these different events, because he was always there. That was when, you know, the Steve Harvey show was on, and Moesha and Keenan and Kel, and you know, all those different shows. But the one thing that I can say that I didn't get challenged like that craziness was because everybody knew I was this Christian virgin. And so they were like, oh yeah, we can't even mess with you. I was about to drop the F-bomb, but they would say that. They'd be like, yeah, it's like I can't even date you because it's like looking at Jesus. Like you the closest thing I've ever been to Jesus. Yeah, so they would always just be like, oh yeah, you that Christian girl. Yeah, I heard about you. So nobody would date me. That's why it was so hard. I was like, how come nobody wants to date me? And because they were like, yeah, you're that Christian girl. We know about you. So
the only reason I asked you this question is like Hollywood and politics are two environments that will always feed you your vices. And a guy who had a national, this guy wasn't a local politician anymore. This guy was a national politician. They were saying that he could have ran for president in the next 5 or 6 years or whatever it was. And it's hard for me to grasp a person who understood the environment, who understood politics, who understood that he was on a national stage, didn't take any of that into consideration when he was moving out there the way he was moving.
Yeah.
Well, there was something I read, or several things that I read that suggested in part of whatever was going on that he was set up. I don't know how much of that is truth or not, But either way, just being conscious of your surroundings and not letting your guard down, especially if you on your way to be president. I followed his campaign. I supported the brother. My heart broke too when it was so close and
so close.
You know, that state of Florida, boy, you got to watch Florida when it comes to any election. But I found it powerful that he came clean, at least clean enough to say, I was struggling. I needed help. I got help.
Did he really come clean, or did he just
he came clean enough for me. I ain't in a brother's business.
I mean, he said, hey, I'm in therapy. I'm going to rehab. I mean, you know, hey, everybody can have a nice little comeback. I hope Nick Cannon gets his comeback too. But yeah, I think everybody can get a comeback. So we got to get to our BPS of the week, everybody. So with that being said, we do have a BPS of the week. I'm gonna pull that up real quick. Where is it? Right here. So every week, just for you guys know, if you're new to the show, we would like to highlight somebody in the community who is doing something absolutely phenomenal, wonderful, whatever it is that is for themselves or for the community. So our BPS of the week is this beautiful lady right here. And after 110 years of aviation, Navy gets its first Black female fighter pilot. The U.S. Navy has its first Black female tactical jet pilot, Lieutenant Junior Grade Madeline, I think it's Swegley, recently completed the service Tactical Air Strike Training Program. The milestone makes her a Navy, makes Swagel a Naval Academy graduate, the first known Black woman who has been certified for the TAC Air mission. She is stationed in South Texas and graduated in 2017. So she is our BPS of the week.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
I know. I think it's, you know, just phenomenal. And I know Tim is in the Navy, so I'm curious to know what his thoughts are of seeing this Black woman out there fighting. And it just reminds me of what was the name of our group? No, not Tuskegee Airmen. Wait, was it them? Yeah.
Red Tail.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking of. Made me think about them. So anyway,
I support Black people doing anything and like that. People don't know how hard it is to fight or jet pilot, the amount of G forces that you have to be able to sustain just to be in it. The fact that if you go too high, too fast, you can black out. Like you got to go through all of these training just to get there. So for a sister to be able to go, or anybody, but especially for this sister to be able to go through that and take the wear and tear on your body that you have to take to take those G's, it's like it's more beyond commendable.
My brother is simply groundbreaking. That's my brother. Isn't he handsome?
Hey, handsome. Christy's brother.
Yeah. So go Navy. We have the best pilots. They have to land on a little boat in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, those aircraft carriers.
Well, we're gonna say goodbye real quick. I had so many friends that were supporting him. I was so disappointed when I heard she also has family. Yeah, she's family. So again, we want to thank all of you guys for joining us every single week. We try to make sure that we are staying on top of what's current, what we feel like you guys would like to discuss. You can always post something. If you feel like something comes up, please let us know. We can definitely try to make it one of our topics on the show every single week. So Janora, do you have anything real quick? We have 2 minutes.
Just an appreciation again of how the show kicked off with Mr. Theon Jones. Abdul, I really took to heart what you talked about in terms of the griot in African society, just being held as high as the king of the tribe or the chief. And I feel like the first step to dismantle our society was to kill off the people who were telling our history, because we had an oral history. We didn't have a written history. And so I am inspired today to not only continue to learn, but also to reach out to old folks. Man, I feel like sometimes we just get in our bubble and it's just us and our friends who are just like us. No, like let's honor the old folks while they are here.
Exactly. And getting that wisdom, I think it's very important. And I just want to say, I do have a show that I am producing tomorrow that's going to be on Facebook Live. You can check out my Facebook. It's called Black Arts Matter. We are bringing about 10 different artists. Some are tap dancing. Khalid Hill, one of my young ones, who's not young anymore, but he's tap dancing. We have singers. We have people doing poetry and people who are doing Shakespeare. But if you guys want to come out, support, we're all about uplifting Black artists. And that's where the spinoff of Black Lives Matter, Black Arts Matter. So definitely check us out tomorrow.
Just appreciate the information that comes from the Black community, whether it be your arts project that you're doing tomorrow or people like Mr. Jones. Like some of the stuff that you might get, though might be saying might not be the sexiest topics, but they're all really important because they all have to do with us and our history and our struggle. So,
all right. And thank you, Kevin. We're done. I think we're out of time, but thank you, Kevin, for joining. Thank you to Janora, who brought our guest on. She is just killing it with getting our guests to have on the show. And then Abdul, who's creating all the information and making sure we get the little writings and stuff together. You know, that's my man, creating all that stuff. So I just want to give a big shout out and thank you to both of you guys too for being a part of the show and Black People Shit and making it work. So, and
thank you, Janora, for having a naked statue behind you. I appreciated that.
Oh, you know what? It's so funny. Okay. Oh, I got 5 seconds. Oh, daggone it. Well, yeah, you're welcome. It's a lot to all of this, but I didn't even know you peeped that. I was trying to cover it up. You can't get nothing past Abdul. So no. But thank you, Chrystee, for keeping the Black People Shit party going.
Yeah.
It's important to talk about these things. So thank you for this platform.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for all joining every week. You guys join in. Justice, Tim, Kevin, Joseph, you guys always come back. Joy, I really appreciate you guys.
Tangerine checked in earlier.
Tangerine.
Theon Sanders, he's always on here too. So appreciate it. If I did name you guys, please forgive me. Oh, looks like James McDuffie was on.
Yes, I had to give a shout out to my family back in North Carolina who was always so supportive. And it's actually my mom who suggested Mr. Theon Jones to be on the show. He's very good friends with my mom's sister in Cleveland, Ohio. So thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, Nora.
Chris. Yeah, and Chris as well for being on. Okay, you guys, we're out. I promise. I will see you guys next week. Thank you. Love you guys. I appreciate you. See you guys later.
Bye, everybody.